Every story leaves something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a question that was never answered. Here, we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully, because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves. This first story was sent in by a listener who wants to remain anonymous. He calls it The Gate That Wasn't Listed. It's about a routine flight out of a regional airport, and a gate that shouldn't have existed. What he found at the end of that corridor still doesn't sit right with me. The departure board showed my flight leaving from gate 74. The problem is, this airport only has 68 gates. I was flying out of a mid-size regional airport in the Midwest. I won't name it, but if you've been there, you know the layout. It's a single terminal shaped like a long horseshoe, gates 1 through 68, with a food court in the middle. I'd flown out of there maybe 30 times for work. I knew the place by heart. It was a Tuesday red-eye, around 11 at night. The airport was mostly empty, that hollow kind of quiet where your footsteps echo off the tile, and the only sound is the hum of the moving walkways running for no one. I checked in, went through security, and glanced at the departure board. My flight, the 11:55 to Denver, was listed under gate 74. I figured it was a typo, probably gate 47, transposed numbers, so I walked to 47. Dark, no airline staff, no other passengers. The screen above the desk was off. I checked the board again from a monitor nearby. Gate 74. I asked a janitor, mopping near the food court, if he knew where gate 74 was. He just shrugged and said they'd been doing construction on the east end. I hadn't noticed any construction before, but I walked east past gate 68, and sure enough, there was a corridor I'd never seen. It wasn't blocked off or anything. No signs, no caution tape. Just a hallway that continued past where the terminal should have ended. The carpet changed from the main terminal's gray pattern to a flat, dark blue. The lighting was dimmer, fluorescent, but spaced farther apart so there were patches of shadow between each one. I followed it. The hallway curved slightly to the left. I passed what looked like gate areas, but they had no numbers, just empty chairs and dark jet bridges. No windows. That's when it started to feel wrong. Every gate in an airport has windows. You can see the tarmac, the planes. These had bare walls where windows should have been. I kept walking because I could see, way at the end of the corridor, a single lit gate sign, 74. There were about a dozen people sitting in the waiting area. I felt relieved for a second. I sat down and pulled out my phone to text my wife that I'd found the gate. No signal, not even one bar. I looked at the other passengers. A woman across from me was reading a book. A man in a suit was sleeping with his head tilted back. A couple sat together, not talking, not looking at their phones, just sitting. I realized none of them had carry-on bags, not a single one. The gate screen said my flight number, correct departure time, correct destination, but the airline name was wrong. It was close, one letter off from the actual airline, like someone had copied it from memory and made a small mistake. I stood up. I told myself I was going to walk back to the main terminal and ask someone at the airline desk. As I turned around, the corridor behind me looked longer than it had when I'd walked in. Much longer. The fluorescent lights stretched out in a line that seemed to narrow to a point. Then the woman with the book looked up at me. She smiled, not warmly. It was the kind of smile you give when someone finally gets the joke. And she said very quietly, "Your boarding group has been called." I walked away. Vast, the corridor did feel longer, but I kept my eyes forward and I didn't stop until I hit the gray carpet of the main terminal. When I got back to the departure board, my flight was now listed at gate 12, a completely normal gate with windows and other passengers, and a board gate agent scanning boarding passes. I flew to Denver. I landed fine, but when I got home and looked at the airport's terminal map online, there was nothing past gate 68. No construction, no corridor. I called the airport authority the next week and asked. The woman on the phone was quiet for a moment. then said they occasionally get reports of signage errors. She didn't explain the corridor. She didn't explain the people. And she hung up faster than felt normal. There's something about airports at night. They feel like they belong to something else, like we're just borrowing the space during the day. This next story is called The Luggage That Came Back Wrong, and it's about a suitcase that arrived at baggage claim with more inside it than what was packed. When I opened my suitcase after landing in Philadelphia, my clothes were inside. My shoes, my toiletries, my books, everything exactly as I'd packed it, except it all smelled like soil. Not dirt, like something had gotten dusty. Soil, deep, wet, organic earth, like the suitcase had been buried and dug back up. I held my favorite sweater to my nose, and the smell was saturated into the fibers. I'd been on a 5-hour flight from Seattle, checked one bag, a black hardshell Samsonite. When it came around the carousel, I grabbed it by the handle and noticed it was heavier than when I checked it. Not dramatically, but enough that I shifted my grip. I figured maybe I was just tired. I didn't open it at the airport. I took a cab to my hotel, set the suitcase on the bed, and unzipped it. That smell hit me immediately. Everything was damp, not soaked, just clammy, like it had been in a humid, enclosed space. I started pulling things out, checking for damage. That's when I found the photographs. They were underneath my clothes, in the bottom of the suitcase. 4 Polaroid-style photos. I had not packed them. I had never seen them before. The first was a photo of a luggage carousel, not the one in Philadelphia, the one in Seattle, where I checked the bag. I recognized the carpet pattern and the signage. The photo was taken from above, like from a security camera angle, but it was a physical photograph. The timestamp in the corner read the date of my flight, but 3 hours before the airport even opened. The second photo was my suitcase, sitting alone on a concrete floor. No carousel, no airport, just a gray floor and what looked like a drain in the corner. The third photo was harder to make out. It was dark, mostly black, but there was a shape in the center. I held it under the lamp. It was a hand, a human hand, resting on what I'm almost certain was the top of my suitcase. The fourth photo was me. It was taken from behind, at the Seattle airport, while I was standing at the check-in counter. I was mid-conversation with the agent. My suitcase was on the scale beside me. Whoever took this was no more than 10 feet away. I called the airline. I described the smell, the dampness, the photos. The representative was polite, but clearly thought I was exaggerating. She said sometimes bags are misrouted or handled in areas that aren't climate controlled. She offered me a cleaning credit. I asked about the photos. She said she'd escalate the concern. No one ever called back. I threw the clothes away. I couldn't get the smell out. I kept the photos for a while, in a drawer in my office, because I thought I might need them as evidence if something else happened. After about 2 weeks, I went to look at them again. The first 3 were the same, but the fourth one, the one of me at the counter, my position had changed. In the original, I was facing the agent. Now I was turned slightly, as if I'd started to look over my shoulder, toward the camera. I threw them away after that. All 4. I put them in the trash, took the trash to the dumpster outside my apartment, and went back inside. The next morning, my suitcase was sitting in the middle of my living room. I had put it in my whole closet. The zipper was open about 2 inches, and from inside, I could smell soil. I haven't traveled since. That was 8 months ago. I donated the suitcase to Goodwill. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just destroyed it. Sometimes I wonder if it would have mattered. The thing that gets me about that story isn't the photos. It's the smell. Soil, like something that belongs underground, like wherever that suitcase went. It went somewhere deep. All right, this next one is called The Man in 34C Who Was Already Dead. And I'll just say, this one was hard to verify, but the person who sent it in had documents, medical documents. The flight attendant asked me to check on the man beside me because he hadn't moved in 4 hours. When I touched his arm, it was cold. Not cool, cold, like touching a window in winter. I was on a transatlantic flight from London to New York. I'd boarded early, settled into my aisle seat, 34D, and watched the other passengers file in. The man in 34C, the middle seat, arrived just before the doors closed. He was average height, thin, wearing a gray coat and a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't put anything in the overhead bin. He just sat down, buckled his seatbelt, and leaned his head back. I assumed he was exhausted. A lot of people on overnight flights are. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't adjust his seat, didn't look at the safety card. The cabin lights went down after takeoff, and I put in my earbuds and fell asleep. When I woke up about 3 hours in, he was in the exact same position. Head back, cap over his eyes, hands in his lap. I didn't think much of it. I got up to use the restroom, came back, and he still hadn't moved, not even a shift in posture. That's when one of the flight attendants leaned over and quietly asked if the gentleman beside me was all right. She said she tried to offer him a drink and a meal earlier, and he hadn't responded either time. I said I assumed he was sleeping. She smiled and nodded, but I could see she was uncomfortable. She asked if I wouldn't mind just giving him a gentle nudge. So I did. I touched his forearm, and the cold shocked me. It wasn't body temperature. It wasn't even close. I pulled my hand back and told the flight attendant something was wrong. She came closer, put her hand near his face, and then her expression changed. She pressed the call button for the other crew. They moved me to another seat while they handled it. I was sitting about 10 rows up, but I could see them in the galley, speaking in low voices. A woman I assumed was an off-duty nurse or doctor went back to examine him. About 20 minutes later, one of the senior crew came to me and said, very calmly, that the passenger had passed away and they were handling the situation. Here's where it stops making sense. After we landed, I was asked to give a brief statement to the airline's ground team. Routine, they said. I described what happened. The woman taking my statement paused and asked me to clarify when the man had sat down. I said right before departure, maybe 5 minutes before the doors closed. She looked at her paperwork and then at her colleague. She told me that the passenger manifest showed seat 34C was unoccupied. No one had been assigned that seat. No one had checked in for it. There was no boarding pass scanned for 34C. I told her that was impossible. He was right next to me for 7 hours. She asked if anyone else had seen him board. I didn't know. She thanked me and said the airline would be in touch. About a month later, I received a follow-up call. A different representative. She confirmed that a deceased male had been removed from the aircraft. She said the medical examiner's preliminary finding was that the man had been dead for significantly longer than the duration of the flight. She wouldn't tell me how much longer. She said the investigation was ongoing and asked me not to discuss it publicly. I didn't listen to that last part, obviously, but I've thought about it almost every day since. He walked onto that plane. I watched him sit down. I watched him buckle his seatbelt. But according to every record, he was never there. And according to the medical examiner, he couldn't have been. I fly for work. I still do, but I always take the window seat now, and I never look too closely at the person beside me. Some things use airports the way we do, as a way to get from one place to another. They just aren't going where we're going. This next story is called The Layover in Terminal F. It comes from someone who got stranded overnight in Atlanta and ended up somewhere the airport says doesn't exist. I have never been able to find Terminal F at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson again. I've looked at every map. I've walked every concourse. It doesn't exist, but I spent 9 hours there in March of last year. My connection was delayed due to weather, and by midnight the airport was a ghost town. My rebooking was for 6 in the morning, so I had to sleep in the terminal. I'd been wandering, looking for a quiet spot away from the few other stranded passengers. When I followed signs for a connector train I thought led to Concourse E, I must have taken a wrong turn. The train arrived. I stepped on, and it carried me one stop to a platform marked Terminal F. I know Atlanta's airport. Concourses T, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Wait, no, there is no F. I know that now, but the sign was clear. Clean white letters on the standard brown background. Terminal F. The platform was empty. The train left behind me and didn't come back. The concourse beyond the platform was fully built out. Gate counters, seating areas, restaurants with their metal shutters pulled down, but everything was just slightly off. The gate numbers started at F1 and went up, but the numbers weren't sequential. F1, F4, F11, F19. Like someone had removed the gates in between. The lighting was that sickly yellow-green of old fluorescence. The moving walkways were running, but in the wrong direction, toward the dead end of the terminal, not back toward the platform. The air smelled like jet fuel, much stronger than it should inside a terminal. I tried to go back to the train platform. The doors I'd walked through were locked, not stuck, locked. I could see the platform through the glass, but the doors wouldn't open. The digital display on the other side showed no upcoming trains, so I walked deeper in, looking for another exit, a help phone, anything. At gate F11, there was a woman sitting alone. She was wearing an airline uniform, but the logo on her vest wasn't Delta or Southwest or anything I recognized. It was a small black circle with a line through it. She was typing on a computer behind the gate counter. I approached her and said I was lost, that I needed to get back to the main terminal. She looked at me and said, "Your flight isn't boarding yet. Please take a seat." I told her I didn't have a flight from this terminal. She looked at her screen and said my name, my full legal name. Then she said a flight number I didn't recognize and a destination I'd never heard of. Not a city, a word but not one I could place. She said it was delayed but would begin boarding shortly, and she suggested I get some rest. I backed away from her. I walked fast toward the end of the concourse. The gates kept climbing. F19, F31, F50. The terminal should have ended. From the outside, Atlanta's concourses are maybe a third of a mile long. I had been walking for at least 15 minutes. At F50, I found a door marked Maintenance Access. It was unlocked. Behind it was a concrete stairwell that led down. I could hear the train below. I took the stairs 2 at a time, came out on a service level, followed the sound of the tracks, and eventually found an emergency access point that let me onto the Concourse E platform. It was 5:48 in the morning. I had entered Terminal F at around 12:30. Over 5 hours of walking in what felt like maybe 40 minutes. I made my flight. When I was boarding, I asked the gate agent at Concourse B if there was a Terminal F. She said no, just a through E plus the domestic terminal. I described the connector train, the platform. She shook her head and said the train only runs between the existing concourses. 2 weeks later, I was looking at my credit card statement. There was a charge from the night of my layover. It was from a vendor listed as F11 Concessions Adel. $9. I never bought anything. I disputed the charge. The credit card company said the vendor code didn't match any registered business. They removed it. But the next month, it appeared again. Same vendor, same amount. It's shown up every month since. $9 from a terminal that doesn't exist for something I never purchased. That recurring charge is what keeps me up at night, like a reservation being held, like something is still waiting. All right, this last story, I debated whether to include it. It was sent in by someone who works airport security, and it involves something captured on camera that I don't have an explanation for. He calls it the passenger in the security footage. I work airport security. I'm not going to say where, and I'm not going to use my real name. But this happened, and the footage exists, and no one has been able to explain it. I need to tell someone, because it's been sitting in my chest for 6 months, and I can't carry it alone anymore. We do routine reviews of security camera footage, random dates, random timestamps, checking for procedural compliance, blind spots, anything unusual. It's boring work. Hours of people taking off shoes and loading bins. In January, I was reviewing footage from a night in late November. A slow Tuesday, maybe 40 passengers, went through the checkpoint between 10 and midnight. At 11:07 p.m., a man entered the security line. He was tall, wearing a long dark coat and carrying no bags, no carry-on, no personal item, nothing. That alone was unusual enough to flag. But what made me stop the footage was his face. He didn't have one. I don't mean it was blurred. I don't mean the camera quality was poor. I've reviewed thousands of hours of footage from these cameras. They capture faces clearly enough for identification at 30 feet. This man's face was smooth, like skin that had never formed features. A head shape, hair, ears, but where his eyes and nose and mouth should have been, there was just flat, unbroken skin, pale, slightly off color, like a mannequin that hadn't been painted. I assumed it was a glitch, compression artifact. I frame advanced through the footage. He walked through the line. He placed nothing in the bins. He walked through the body scanner. The TSA officer on the other side looked at him and waved him through. Didn't stop him. Didn't react. Just gestured him forward like every other passenger. I checked the body scanner log for that timestamp. It recorded a scan. The silhouette was normal. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, a head. But in the chest cavity, where the scanner would normally show a vague outline of organs and ribs, there was nothing. The interior of the torso was empty, hollow, like a shell. I pulled the footage from the next camera. The man walked into the terminal. At 11:09, he passed a family sitting near gate 22. A small child, maybe 3 or 4, was sitting on her father's lap facing the concourse. When the man walked past, the child began screaming. Not crying, screaming, the kind of sound that makes other passengers turn and stare. The father picked her up and moved to another area. The man continued to gate 31, the farthest gate from the checkpoint. No flight was scheduled there. The lights above the gate were off. He sat in the last seat of the row, in the corner where the window met the wall, and he didn't move. I pulled 8 hours of footage, from 11:09 p.m. to 7:15 a.m. when the morning crew began arriving. He sat in that chair without moving. Not a shift, not a twitch, completely still. At 7:15, a janitor walked past him. The janitor glanced at him, then kept walking. Then the janitor stopped. He turned back. He stared at the man for almost a full minute. Then the janitor walked quickly away, pulling out a radio. By the time airport security arrived at gate 31 at 7:23, the seat was empty. I checked every camera between gate 31 and the exits, every angle, every hallway, every restroom entrance. He never appeared on any of them. He was in the seat at 7:16 when the janitor looked back. He was gone at 7:23, 7 minutes, and no camera in the entire airport captured him leaving. I filed the report. My supervisor reviewed the footage and confirmed what I saw. He escalated it. I expected a serious investigation. What I got instead was a meeting with 2 people I'd never seen before. They weren't TSA. They weren't airline. They wore no badges and gave no names. They watched the footage on my workstation without speaking. Then one of them turned to me and said, "This is the 4th one this year." I asked what that meant. He said, "How long have you worked here?" I said 6 years. He nodded and said, "Have you ever reviewed footage from the lower baggage level? Camera 9? I said no. That camera covers a section of the automated baggage system that runs under the terminal. There's never a reason to review it." He said, "Don't." They took a copy of the footage and left. My supervisor told me the report had been closed and reclassified. He wouldn't say as what. He told me to move on to the next review date. I didn't listen. That night from home, I logged into the camera system remotely and pulled up camera 9, the lower baggage level. I scrubbed to the same night, November, 11 p.m. The conveyor belts were running. Suitcases moved through the frame. Normal. And then at 11 p.m., 2 minutes after the man had sat down at gate 31, the belt stopped, all of them simultaneously, and standing in the middle of the belt between the suitcases were 4 figures, same build, same long dark coats, same smooth, featureless faces, standing perfectly still, facing the camera. They stood there for 6 seconds. Then the belt started again, and they were gone. I closed the feed. I logged out. I haven't opened camera 9 since. The man told me this was the 4th one this year. 4 figures on the belt. I don't think those numbers are a coincidence, and I don't think they're done, because it's June now, and the year is only half over.
And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.